Hi again. In Dwight Wilson, Armageddon Now, page 102, still in the chapter Balfour Betrayed, Wilson continues, furthermore, the Arabs were cast in a demonic role in the fulfillment of the end-time prophecies. In analyzing the 1929 outbreaks, that is, outbreaks of persecution against the Jews, the Jewish Missionary magazine predicted, at the next big outbreak, probably pan-Islam will rise in arms against the British Empire, causing another world war and ending in the final battle of Armageddon. Similarly, the King's Business magazine spoke of the present death struggle. Knowing the tremendous forces that back the lawless Arab, not only the Muslim, certainly, but the world's lawless communistic forces, most probably, it is not hard to see that the spark may soon set the world aflame, for its last bloody struggle may find its tinder in Palestine. End of quote. The editor of Prophecy, Keith L. Brooks, went even further. Quote, the Arab and Muslim world is not only anti-Semitic, but it is out and out antichrist. End of quote. On the occasion of the murder of the British District Commissioner for Galilee by Arabs in 1937, Brooks categorized the event as fulfillment of prophecy. Quote, it was written concerning Ishmael, his hand shall be against every man. That's a quote from Genesis 16, verse 12. A series of articles on the Arab-Jewish problem appeared in the King's Business in 1930. Arthur W. Payne played upon the paper's name as he said, they that did the King's business helped the Jews, we are told in the book of Esther. Whose business are they doing who not only deliberately hinder, but plunder and murder them ruthlessly, time after time, as the Arabs have done in the years 1920, 1921, and now in 1929. A response to this assignment of a diabolic role to the Arab was written by W. F. Smalley of Jerusalem. This was one of the few defenses of the Arab position published in the 1930s in the Premillenarian literature. Smalley argued against a simplistic view. We cannot say that simply because the Jews were here first, they have the right to return. This is what Smalley said. And he goes on, both Jew and Arab obtained the land through conquest. In a section titled Two Conflicting Promises, Smalley recalled that prior to the Balfour Declaration, the British had promised independence to the Arabs in the territory, including Palestine. The British High Commissioner had made a commitment to Sharif Hussein of Hejaz. Quote, Great Britain is prepared to recognize and support the independence of the Arabs within the territories included in the limits and boundaries proposed by the Sharif of Mecca. End of quote. The conflicting commitment of the Balfour Declaration was considered by the Arabs as a great betrayal. Smalley undercut the traditional premillenarian image of the Jew by saying, quote, most of the spokesmen among the Jews are the militant type, who wave the red flag and cry out their willingness to brandish the sword. End of quote. If the Arabs were irrational, it was understandable. Quote, they have seen their absentee landlords sell to newcomers the land that they have been cultivating for centuries. Unquote. Smalley concluded his case under the subtitle, Shall the Minority Rule? This is Smalley now for about a paragraph. If we are willing to put aside all the ideals about which men talked during and immediately after the war, World War I, to the effect that the world was being made safe for small and weak peoples, and to revert to the doctrine that when a nation conquers an area, it may rule as it desires, we may agree that England has a right to give Palestine to the Jews, the Eskimos, or the Hottentots. But if we say that people should have the right to be ruled as they desire, an easy solution becomes impossible. It is easy to forget that Palestine has, after these years of freedom for Jewish immigration, some 163,000 Jews, as over against about 635,000 so-called Arabs. Shall the minority rule? What would happen if some power were to conquer our own country and say that since there are 47 other states, all the inhabitants of California, for instance, should be expatriated to another state, and that the American Indian who formerly inhabited the country should be reinstated? It's altogether likely that the inhabitants of California would do as much as the Arabs do today. But, you say, whether it appears to us just or otherwise, God has said that the Jews are to return to Palestine, and we are not to put our puny ideas of justice over against his omnipotence. Smalley says, granted, but has God stated that the Jews will have a human government again in Palestine? God has not put his seal of inspiration on the Balfour Declaration. I want to see the Jew given every right that the Arab has, but I do not like to see 3/4 of the population threatened with being ruled by the other 1/4. So that's the end of the quote from Smalley. More to come in the next segment. But we can quickly see nothing has much changed in the 90 or so years since these sentiments were being bandied about. In fact, the situation has gotten more dire. There's far more people involved now and far more international tentacles, shall we say. Plus, there's nuclear weapons. So the situation was unresolvable then, as Smalley seems to admit, and it's even more unresolvable from the human side today. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the psalm says. See you next time. Oh, I'll put a link in. The link is to a video we did from the book of Genesis, chapter 9, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth, world history in 3 verses. See you next time.